If you've somehow managed to avoid it so far, I've got a little bit of a business owner spoiler alert for you this week. You will receive negative feedback in your business. You cannot and will not please everyone with the decisions that you make. But there is a right way and a wrong way to respond to negative feedback. And there's also a right way and a wrong way to provide said feedback, which we will get to in a moment. But before we dive into this, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so that you never miss a tutorial or upload. So, what's the secret to avoiding negative feedback in your business? Well, the short answer is there isn't one. No matter what you do, there are going to be people who don't like it. Whether it's a decision you make in your personal life that just comes through in your business, or it's a direction that you take your business, there are going to be people who wish that you would keep things the way they were or wish you had moved in a different direction. But the reality is that you can't listen to what everybody else has to say. Now, I'm not at all saying don't listen to them at all, and I'll get to that in a minute. But one of the responsibilities that comes with being a business owner is making those difficult decisions and then knowing when you need to stay the course in the face of negative feedback. So I want to talk about one specific situation where I've been seeing this. It happens all the time, everywhere, with every business, but it's been happening a lot to one of my favorite products, which you guys are well aware of, is Trello. And they have made some changes lately, okay? There's no way to kind of get around that. They have made some pretty big changes. And there are people who love the changes. There are people who clearly hate the changes. And there are people who are like me who love seeing that investment is happening with this product. But, I don't love every choice that they've made so far. So how is Trello responding to this negative feedback they've been getting? Honestly, in my personal opinion, I think they're doing a pretty good job. Again, I don't agree with every decision that they're making or the things that they're choosing not to do or listen to at this point, but I think they're balancing pretty well between listening to the feedback, making the changes that make sense, and I'll get to that in a minute, but also staying the course with their new direction and their new mission for the product. So we'll look at some of the things that they've been doing, some of the ways they've been responding, but I also want to come back to what I mentioned in the intro about how there is a right way and a wrong way to provide negative feedback. Let me preface by saying negative feedback, in my opinion, is not trolling. I'm not talking about the people who just straight up go and post a comment somewhere or whatever and just crap all over something. For someone to come into a different channel, Reddit, or in the Atlassian community or something and say, oh, Trello's stupid, you should use Jira or Notion or ClickUp or whatever else. If they can't quantify why they're saying that, to me, that's trolling. It's useless. And if I were on the Trello team, I would just ignore those comments altogether. Okay? Because the reality is that they're just there to be a naysayer. They don't have anything constructive to say. And honestly, they don't even have a real opinion. They're simply being negative to be negative. But there have been some very constructive comments made, especially in the Atlassian community, because most people know that that's where the Trello product team is looking. I don't even know if they are looking at the Reddit channel at all. Maybe they do, but they're definitely looking in the community because they're active in the community. And there have been some comments there that have provided some constructive criticism, some feedback. And I think it's been a mixed bag of people who have, some negative feedback, some negative comments, some complaints, as it were, but are doing it in a respectful way. And then there are those people who are just plain old being mean about it, and it's just completely unnecessary. So I want to look at a couple of examples here. So this first one that I'm going to bring up here, this is from Reddit. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. You're welcome to pause and read it if you want to. But honestly, the header alone makes me not even want to read the entire rest of the post. Because if you're going to be that just outright negative, to say that something is hot garbage, are you kidding? I'd like to see you, commenter, whoever they are, because it's anonymous over on Reddit. I'd like to see you go and create something even half as good as what they have created with Trello. And even though the changes that they're making may not be in a direction that you like, well, fine. There are tons of other platforms out there. Go use one of them. Do you really need to come here and say such negative stuff? Now, I get that maybe people are really passionate about it because maybe they loved it how it was and they were super passionate about it, and now they feel like they've been betrayed or something. Look, there's a part of me, I understand that, okay? If you guys know I love Trello, and if Trello were to just completely change, I would be passionate about it if I didn't like it. But even if I was passionate about it and I didn't like it, I would never say something like this, and I'll get into the why I would never do that in a minute. But like, that's just uncalled for. It's rude, it's inappropriate, it's unnecessary. So I mean, yeah, okay, I looked at a couple of other things that they said in this comment only for you guys. But yeah, okay, so there's some good points. Yes, give us the ability to have the classic view, go back to what we loved about Trello. I get that, but you have to realize that for them as a product team, as a business, even if they allowed us the ability to toggle back and forth for now, it's not going to be something that they can support forever. They're not going to, as a company, have two versions of Trello out there that they have to support. It doesn't make any business sense for them. And so therefore, they're not going to do it. So even if they extended that for a while and gave you the opportunity to switch back, it's not going to last forever. You're only buying yourself time until you end up in the same situation that you're in right now. So like, it's not a viable solution, even though it seems to you like it's obvious. The reality is if they tried to do that, then the people on the classic view would get automatically a worse customer service experience. They would have a deprecated product because of the fact that they wouldn't be able to support it in the way that they're going to support the newer version. So as things break and as bugs appear because of changes they're making on the back end, they're not going to be able to fix them for you. And so you're going to end up with an even worse situation. Look, I'm not going to get into all the weeds of the technical side behind all this stuff, but that's just the reality. So when they make a decision like this, they have to push forward with it. And yes, they can make some choices to allow for customization and options, which I think they're doing, and we'll get to that. We've actually already talked about that on the channel, but they're doing that. But they can't just say, oh, well, you get to choose which one you want. Not forever. That's not going to be a choice moving forward. So it's not a viable solution here. And honestly, again, just it coming from this subject line, I'm over it. I'm so over it. So here's a way that Atlassian is addressing some of the suggestions, some of the complaints and whatever. So I talked about this, I guess it was a couple of weeks ago now on my tutorial, where I showed some of the upcoming changes due to feedback and some of the things that have already been changed due to the feedback. This is some of the quality of life things like auto archiving in the inbox and the upcoming ability to choose how your board navigation works. And that's the one I want to talk about. So one of the biggest complaints that I'm seeing out there are the people who either miss the sidebar where they had all of their boards and were able to navigate, which honestly, I never used that to navigate from board to board before. So I get that some people did, but I don't really see how that's such a big deal. But then there's the people who just plain don't like the board switcher panel, the navigation panel, where it is in the bottom center of the page. That one I can understand, because while I like the minimalist view of that smaller navigation panel, it is kind of in an awkward place. Because if you're looking at a list that's in the middle of your board, it kind of runs into it, right? And same thing with the scroll bar at the bottom if you're scrolling from side to side on your board. Now, granted, you don't have to use the scroll bar if you don't have, full lists everywhere. You could just click and kind of drag and swipe throughout in the middle of the board. But that's not really the point. The point is it's kind of in an awkward, weird place. And honestly, there have been some great suggestions of alternates where they could have put it, like at the top of the page, up in line with the rest of the menu area, because that whole center section is kind of empty now. I also saw somebody suggest like pinning it up over on the top left, kind of where some of the board navigation used to live, which is the ones that I used to use. So honestly, I think that's cool too. I've also seen a great suggestion of making that little panel like dockable. So meaning that you can like click and move it and then lock it where it makes sense for you. So to me, it's like there's a lot of suggestions right there that they could use to make that panel better. One of the things they've decided to do, and they've already told us here in this post that I'm highlighting, they are giving us the option to kind of pin that navigation over to the left and kind of recreating that side panel that a lot of people are missing. I don't personally have that yet. I feel like it's still in the rollout phase, but I think that's a great solution. Now, is it going to please everyone? Again, no, because you can't, but at least it's giving us options and showing us that they are listening to the feedback. They've also done a bunch of other things that are listening to feedback too. So Like, I know that there are some people who don't feel like they're listening, but just because they're not giving you every single thing you're asking for doesn't mean they're not listening, right? They're listening, but they have to make smart business decisions about what they do and what they don't do. And I loved this response. I think this was a comment on the post I was just showing. Somebody who's recognizing like, hey, there are people here actually working on this product that everybody is yelling at, and they're giving them some much needed compliments and kudos, I would say. And I like that they're saying, you know, it's clear that they thought there were some bad decisions made, because they're saying, I'm glad common sense prevailed and now we have an option. Okay. Yeah. They're listening, they're hearing us, and they're implementing something that is like an actual fix and not just a workaround. Yes, this kind of feedback, this kind of thing, even when you can tell that this person obviously left some sort of negative feedback previously, they're recognizing that that negative feedback was listened to and acted on, and they're appreciating that. So little things, guys, but it's not that hard to do. Here's another one, right? Where you can see that somebody is thanking and saying, look, you know, yeah, we were all complaining, and, you know, they're not exactly apologizing for complaining, but they're saying like, we gave reasons and arguments and you guys are listening and we're getting results. Yes. And look, I'm going to be honest here. I'm one of the people who has made some, I don't want to say negative feedback, but I would say constructive criticism. I've said, hey, you know, I love seeing what I'm seeing, but there's a couple things that I wish we could do, or that it would be cool if this, right? Those are not, I guess, as much negative feedback as just like suggestions, but at the same time, they do imply that I'm not in love with what I'm seeing yet, right? So there are ways to express that we don't love something or that we think it can be improved upon without being jerks about it. Here's another person who is thanking them for all the improvements and stuff like that, but then still bringing up a point and saying like, hey, there's still, I'm seeing a major issue. UX is like user interface, right? It's like a user experience. An issue saying that the calendar timeline views, and this is the workspace views, which I think we've talked about here on the channel, but basically it went from, and this is true, went from an easy like click to go to your workspace views to now you have to like go to the workspace, scroll, click, da da da. It is a little bit more cumbersome for people who use those regularly. I'm not personally one of those people, so it hasn't impacted me in the same way, but I definitely see what they're talking about. And for teams that use those views, especially like in meetings and things like that, yeah, I can see their point that it's a little bit of a regression for them. Okay, let's see. What other comments do we have here? Okay, see this one. Do you need to start with this kind of header to your comment? Thanks, I hate it. Please stop. If you hate it, bye, go find another platform. There are plenty of options out there. And it's not Trello's job to make each and every user 100% happy. It can't be done. So don't talk to them like it can be done, because you couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. It's impossible. This person is clearly just hating on every single change that they've been making recently. And look, this is one of the reasons that I say here so much on the channel that every platform is going to have problems. No platform is perfect, and you have to find the right one for you. I recommend things like Trello. I recommend Kit. I recommend Descript. There are certain platforms I recommend because A, I use them, but also because I think they're the most universally beneficial to people. But that doesn't mean it's right for everyone. And so there are times when I guide somebody towards a different option. It's rare, yes, but I do it because I'm not going to try to shoehorn somebody into a platform that's not right for them. And if the direction that Trello is going is not right for your needs, it's your responsibility to recognize that and make a change. It's not Trello's responsibility to listen to one customer and say, oh, well, we're going to just abandon everything that we're doing because this person didn't like it, right? That would be ridiculous. And if somebody came to you that way, especially as a business owner, and said, oh, you need to change everything that you're doing because I don't like it, how would you react to that? How would you feel about that? Honestly. Think about that for a second, and then approach this kind of situation in the way that you would want someone to approach you. And like, again, okay, they started out with a somewhat benign title, but Holy Ugly Revert Now. Seriously? Again, this ran through a full open beta, and I'm sure it ran through an alpha or a closed beta before that. That means that multiple people had a chance to interact with this new user interface, which, by the way, can I just pause for a second and say it's not that different? Like, yes, there's new functionality coming in. Yes, there are some changes to board navigation and things like that. But honestly, As someone who's been using Trello for over a decade, I don't notice that big of a difference as far as the day-to-day. Things like bringing in the inbox and the planner, those have been fantastic, but they're not changes to existing interface. They're just additions, improvements, updates. The only real changes that I've been seeing, like really the board navigation is the biggest, and then the orientation of the cards and things like that. Like, yes, it's different. It's had a little bit of a learning curve for me, but I honestly haven't noticed really much of any negative impact to my productivity. Has it improved my productivity? I'm not going to say the new layout or the board switcher have improved my productivity, but the inbox and the planner have. So like, you take the good, you take the bad, right? And I just totally heard the Facts of Life theme song in my head when I said that. And if you know what I'm talking about, then you're the same generation as me, and I love you. But the point is that, like, yeah, I feel like this is just harsh for no reason. Like, it got past the suggestion stage. It got all the way through alphas, close, and open betas. So maybe you're in the minority here, dude. Maybe it's not that, like, oh, they just didn't ask anybody. They did. They asked plenty of people. So like I said earlier, like, you're not going to avoid the negative feedback even when you do the betas and you do the market research. But as a small business owner, especially when you don't have the same level of customer base that you can roll out betas and things like that, and you may feel like that doesn't apply to you because, like, obviously we're talking about a software here, and so they can develop something and then let certain people use it. That totally applies in your business too, almost no matter what your business is, because you can always give an advanced copy of something to someone or allow them to access or try one of your services early. Or if you're a product seller, you can create some early and sell them at discount that people can give you their feedback or whatever. There's a way you can apply this concept no matter what your business is. And this makes me think of 2 books that I've read this year for my other podcast, the Success Through Community podcast, and that is Will It Fly by Pat Flynn and $1 Million Weekend by Noah Kagan. And I wanted to bring in a quote from each of them because both of them said roughly the same things, honestly. It was interesting that I read them both in the same season because I didn't expect them to basically be the same. I don't want to say the same book, but like they're telling the same basic concepts and they're explaining the same because they're tried and true strategies. Like, there's a reason why multiple people write about them, and I'm sure there are plenty more books out there. But one of the things that Pat Flynn said, and I kind of love this quote, he says, intuition and experience are poor predictors of which products and businesses will be profitable. And I kind of love that. I mean, I also kind of hate that because there's a part of me that says, well, no, I've been, a business owner for how many years, like 20 some odd years. Oh, gosh, sometimes I don't like thinking that out loud. But I've been a business owner for a long time. I know what people interact with. I know what they like. And I have good intuition for this because I'm an entrepreneur spirit and I can see when a business is going to be successful or whatever. But the reality is that nobody can do that. Even people like Pat Flynn and Noah Kagan, who have very successful businesses, they cannot rely solely on their intuition and experience. Do those things come into play? Absolutely. But do they rely on them? No. They do their market research and they vet an idea or a product before they start selling it. Same thing Noah Kagan says, keep talking and listening to your customers so you can find out what they need. Now, there will be people who watch this who will argue, well, Trello didn't do that because if they did, then like all these people wouldn't be complaining and whatever. But they did do that. It's just that not every single customer can be polled at the beginning, right? And not every single customer is going to like what they're doing. But that doesn't mean that they weren't doing this process, doing their market research. They absolutely did with the betas, okay? So I guess what I'm getting at is this. As a business owner, handling negative feedback requires the same thing as everything else in your business. It requires balance and intention. You cannot please everyone, and not only will trying to make you crazy, it'll potentially be more harmful to your business than just sticking to your guns and moving forward anyway. But either way, ignoring negative feedback, constructive negative feedback, isn't the answer either. Just because you have a vision for what your business should be and what you want it to look like doesn't mean that you can just stick your head in the sand and barrel forward, ignoring all the things that your customers are trying to tell you. Yes, you need to have a clear vision, but it needs to be flexible and adaptable. You don't want to lose sight of what you are ultimately trying to achieve, but don't assume that you have all the answers either. And as just a final note for customers who have negative feedback that they would like to provide for a business owner or a big company, just remember, these are people. These people have feelings. They are not perfect, and they might have even made mistakes and certain decisions that are not the right ones for their business. But I can almost guarantee you that in every situation, their intention was always to serve you better. When you're talking to or giving feedback to a small business owner, please remember that there is a good chance that their business is a core part of their identity. So when you attack them in a non-constructive way, they will feel that as a personal attack. And even when we're talking about larger companies like with Trello, they may seem like this nameless, faceless entity to you, but there are human beings on the Trello product team, on any of these teams, that are working super hard and putting their heart and soul into trying to create a better product for you, a better experience for you. They have feelings too. And if you have constructive criticism, they're going to give you a forum, they're going to give you a place and a way to provide your feedback and your criticism. And if you have constructive criticism, there is a way to provide it. But I can promise you that the words hot garbage will never be a part of it. I hope you liked that video, and more importantly, that you found it helpful. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing it with a fellow solopreneur. And make sure you check out the description for links to how we can connect and maybe even work together.